Hey, Steve Mignani here, doing the Junkyard Crawl at Berniston Auto Wrecking. We're back, and this is the Funny Fairmont, and we are getting back into the Junkyard Crawl videos, and as you all probably know, for the last 6 days, or 6 shows, we've shown the How to Build Altered Wheelbase Funny Cars DVD in 6 15-minute segments. And we did that because I had to go to Barrett-Jackson. I was away from the junkyard, so we used that as kind of a fun or funny car filler. But before we get back into the junkyard, I just want to put a capstone onto the altered wheelbase thing, because the final car we showed you in that video was the Funny Fairmont. But the car was in its California mode when we showed you the car, which means it had a 6-cylinder engine, because in California you can't do engine swaps. So now in Massachusetts, I moved here like 11 years ago, you can do what you want with a car that's as old as the 1981 Fairmont. So let's take a quick look at the Funny Fairmont. Now in the video, this thing was born a 2-door post with the 200 cube 88 horsepower inline 6 and a C4 or even a C3, I think, automatic transmission. Well, that was then. This is now a Ford Motorsport 4.6 Cammer crate engine. Actually, I should say it's a Ford Mach 1 crate engine, but I kind of dummied it down. I bought some Ford Mustang Cobra cam covers, stripped off the coating, and made them look as raw and ugly as I possibly could, because I like a car that shines from the inside out. Now, the induction on a standard Mustang Mach 1 0304 is what this engine's from. Would have been a barrel ram with a 2 Venturi throttle body. Not very sexy to look at. They work great. But, you know, an old-time funny car or match racer, you got to have 8 stacks, man. It's like the crown on the king's head. So an Australian company called DC&O makes this 8-stack EFI unit. Ordinarily, this thing lives inside of a box, and these manifolds are used in the Australian V8 Supercar Road Race Series. Well, I had Kinsler make up these foot-tall spun aluminum velocity stacks with a nice bell mouth, and a local trade school did these little adapters for the bottom, and voila! It looks like an old-school Hilborn deal on an old-school 427 Cammer, kinda, you know? Now, the spark plug wires on this thing, these are from MSD, and we look here, we can see these things go all the way down inside. These Cammer motors are truly a Hemi. Now there's 4 valves, of course, and 4 cams on each side, but what I wanted not to have was the coil-on engine, coil-on plug type ignition, which is what the Mach 1 used to have. So I says, you know, why don't we just put the coils inside the car and have MSD send me these wires, I'll cut them to length and put ends on them. So the wires go through the firewall right here, and then inside the car, under the dash, if you go around me to the left there, Shane, and Shane Richardson, my ace cameraman, running the camera, but if he takes the camera and looks underneath the dash, you'll see where those coil packs are located and the wires go to it. And then to the right of that thing, closer to the side of the car, you'll see the computer, which is a Holly. I believe it's, an Avenger or whatever, but it's a great little computer. You know, back in the 60s, Hilborn mechanical fuel injection was seen on a lot of these old funny cars. And it's a good thing, but the trouble is with the mechanical injection, unless you're really great at tuning, they either idled awesome or they made great power wide open, but rarely the two things would happen. So running a mechanical fuel injection on the street was kind of problematic. With the electronics, this thing idles like a new Mustang, but has good power, up to 7,000 RPM. The beauty too of these 4-valve heads is that there are 4 valves per chamber. In fact, there were 2 1.4-inch intake valves. That's a 290 intake valve, bigger than a Hemi, the equivalent. And the exhaust side, there were 2 1.18 diameter exhaust valves, which is like a 2.3. So this thing has 290, 2.3 intake and exhaust valves, if you will, if you're talking 2 valves. So there's a bunch of breathing in this thing. These camera motors, the 4-valve, 4-cam V8s, the 4.6s, 5.4s, 5.8s are nasty creatures from 4,000 to 7,000 RPM, big power. Now here's the thing, when I built this car, I didn't want a Ford Falcon Futura. Now this, if you look at it, is a 2-door, and on the other side of this thing, we'll see that roof line, which has that kind of weird deltoid tiara thing. Now Bob Glidden, yeah, he dominated NHRA Pro 78, 79 with one of these things, the red, white, and blue car, the Motorcraft car, but I wanted a 2-door post. So I searched high and low in Southern California and finally found this thing for 800 bucks in the local recycler. And what I always do when I build a car, this is my notebook. And this thing right here, I started out, let's go to the trunk and just do some page by page on this thing. So here it is, and way back on May 8th, 2005, my first entry, welcome to Project Ford Charger. And basically by this point in time, I'd already built the Wilshire Shaker 63 Chevy Nova and the 63 Dart Rampage, but I says, you know, I want to build a Ford version of that sort of thing. So this is kind of my little what's up dock. We'll see that on the front of the car in a moment, but dual overhead cam. Get it? Wink, wink, sort of a Bugs Bunny kind of a thing. But here's all the notes on it, and basically just going step by step. And I deleted the air conditioner, took 70 pounds out of the car. I Swiss cheesed the rear bumper. On this page we see here, this was done July 16, 2005. Is it almost 20 years ago? Yep. But the rear bumper Swiss cheese, pulled 7 pounds out, and come around here. And this is what I'm talking about when I say Swiss cheesed. I took a hole saw and removed material right here. And of course I marked it first so it wouldn't be asymmetrical. And also there is some iron bars in here, crash bars, that I took off. But the amazing thing about the Fairmont, which came along in 1978, is that these are lightweight cars from the factory. Bumpers are aluminum right from the factory. Now you go back to 63, the lightweight Galaxies, those are exotic things, but by 1978, aluminum bumpers and Swiss cheese bodies were normal, as Ford and all of Detroit tried to make the CAFE standards and get good fuel economy ratings, or pay millions to the government in penalties. So, you know, Ford's loss was our gain in a sense. But we continue on this notebook here, and just from page to page, all the things that were done, and you know, asked for a camera, and finally I did get Ford to sell me a camera and a 5-speed for about 6,000 bucks. Got that done. Now before the V8 swap, the car weighed 2,520 pounds, and after the V8, this was the 6-banger and the automatic, afterwards 2,960 with me in the car, or 2,759. So it actually gained about 220 pounds going from 6-banger automatic to camera and 8.8 rear axle and Tremec TKO 5-speed transmission. So anyway, my little notebook here tells the story of this car going together, and you know, pictures of the machine or the car way back before. This is the car when I first bought it in California, $900 right there. And it's funny that I bought it from a machine shop owner. His daughter was going to police academy. What do I find inside of the car? Bags of marijuana, right? Go figure. But hey, whatever. But a good clean little two-door sedan right there. Hard to find. I looked for about a year. But again, the two-door post, the two-door sedan body style was a must for me, because back in the 60s, if I was building a Ford camera-powered funny car, I would have used a Falcon or a Fairlane two-door post, or if I really had some bucks, a 65 Mustang 2+2 fastback. But again, this is sort of my take on a modern funny car, if you will, you know, the funny car aesthetic applied to a modern car. Now the rear suspension on this thing is kind of interesting, because when these cars are stock, as with a 5-liter Mustang, they have a 4-link and coil springs. And that's really good. The 5-liter drag cars hook and boogie. Trouble is, those things are usually lowered. For this thing, I put Ford Fairmont station wagon V8 springs in the back, coil springs, and it rose higher. And I even made the anchor points a little higher. Well, doing that screwed up the instant center. And initially with the V8, this thing was an axle hopping piece of junk. You'd bang it in second and first, and the axle would just go bap, 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 bap. There was no way to hook it up. And I said, I'm not going to chase my ass with this. So I put Chrysler Superstock leaf springs right there. If you look there, this is probably the world's only Fox-bodied Ford with Chrysler leaf springs. And to the right, we'll see the 8.8-inch rear axle. That is a Ford 5-liter Mustang item with 373 aftermarket gears, the stock traction lock with fresh clutches. And, you know, it works really well. I have not replaced the C-clips yet, because these tires don't generate enough traction to really break anything. I would guess that at the drag strip with a set of slicks on this thing, leaving it $4 grand or $5 grand, might find out those C-clips and the axles need to be upgraded. But at this point in time, the car, the traction, by the way, this thing, the rear weight is about 55%. The front is about 45%. Yes, by altering the wheelbase, there's more weight on the back than the front. That's the point of altering a wheelbase, then or now. And you can rip gears in this thing, and the tires haze, but they're not up in smoke like you'd expect. Now, inside the trunk of this thing is kind of where the surgery scars are on display. And here we see I took the spare tire well, deleted that, because these things have this big goofy spare tire well. Just put a piece of steel right there, and then a Dodge A100 battery box right here, and the battery, it's bolted down. And so the battery rides in the back. Again, a little more weight at the tail. But this here, this sort of bronze sheet metal, that is a section of Plymouth Duster hood. In fact, I believe this might be explained in the video. But anyway, that is basically, that's the 10-inch rear suspension and wheel opening move, that right there. And basically, as we saw in the video, you just basically slice, connect the dots, and move things forward. So again, this is not my junkyard car, but of course today we are at Berniston Auto Wrecking. And I just want to put a cap on the last 6 days of the show where we showed how to build altered wheelbase funny cars. So this car is a lot of fun, and we'll have some footage of driving this, maybe a launch or two. But the beauty of this thing is how you can take the funny car aesthetic and apply it to almost anything and make it cooler, you know? Now the front suspension on these things, as we know, is McPherson strut, just like a Fox Mustang, because after all, the Fairmont came out 1 year before the Fox Mustang and shares everything underneath the skin. A couple inches longer wheelbase, but otherwise they are absolute cousins under the skin. So that said, the Fox suspension, the McPherson struts, the spring tires had to go. So instead, I have a straight axle with long leaf springs from Detroit Eaton up on the front of this thing, and just like an old funny car. Now the wheels are a special story. These are actually from Ray Franklin's Vintage Engineering, and I'm a stickler for the right torque thrust. Now, we all know that American racing, the original torque thrust was made in magnesium or aluminum, and the flat spokes like this were seen on 65 Ford overhead cam Mustangs, the 64 aluminum nose Hemi Mopars. These were factory stuff. Now, these kind of wheels right here were never really available after like 1970. They were just gone. But Ray Franklin's Vintage Engineering reproduced these things spot on. And the beauty of these things is that unlike modern torque thrust, the Ds, which have that crooked crow's foot spoke, these things are a dead ringer. Now I gotta say, these used to be shiny, but being magnesium, they instantly start to corrode with oxygen in the air. And so they kind of a pitted look, which is fine with me. Front bumper is fiberglass. Made that up. And again, old-time funny cars, the faster they went, the more air they would push. So you start to see folks experimenting with aerodynamics. And this is a little plow-type airfoil right here. This would have been made to put air or force air to go around the car rather than under it when you get into 140, 150, 160 mile an hour. A lot of the match racers, again, started to fly when they started running blowers and hydrazine and stuff like that. But for here, it's just for effect. But again, the what's up dock, the idea for my notebook becomes reality right here. Now, I painted it myself. I'm not so good with a brush. And I did it so it kind of hides in plain sight. I made it so you don't really see it. It's kind of gray, it hides. But if I was really good, I'd paint that thing red or blue or something like that. But it's there. What's up, Doc? So that's kind of the story of the Funny Fairmont and how we're transitioning back into the Junkyard Crawl here on the Steve Baggs YouTube channel. So again, the funny car videos were awesome. There were 6 of them, going on 7. But now let's get back to the junkyard here at Berniston Auto Wrecking.